My child, you can slow down now. There is nothing you need to rush toward in this moment. Nothing is being asked of you. Nothing is expected from you right now. You have already done enough for today, even if it does not feel that way. Even if your mind keeps telling you there was more you should have finished, more you should have handled better, more you should have understood. You can set all of that down here. I know this day has felt long, not because of one single thing, but because of the quiet weight you have been carrying beneath everything else. The kind of weight that does not always have words. The kind that settles into your body and makes even simple things feel heavy. I see you. I see how much effort it took to keep going. I see how often you chose to stay silent instead of explaining how tired you really were. I see the moments when you smiled or nodded, even though something inside you was aching. You were not weak in those moments. You were surviving. And surviving takes more strength than most people ever realize. You do not need to hold that strength right now. You do not need to stay alert. You do not need to be prepared for what comes next. You are allowed to rest here. Let your body notice this moment. Notice where you are sitting or lying down. Notice how the surface beneath you supports your weight without asking anything in return. You do not have to hold yourself up. You are already being held. If your thoughts are busy, that is okay. You do not need to push them away. You do not need to follow them either. Just let them exist without engaging. There are things your heart has been carrying for a long time. Concerns you revisit again and again. Questions that never seem to fully resolve. Memories that surface when you least expect them. Tonight, you do not need to sort through any of it. You do not need answers. You do not need clarity. You do not need a plan. You only need this moment to be what it is. I know there are parts of you that stay tense, even when you are trying to rest. Parts that learn to stay ready because at one point, being ready felt like the only way to stay safe. That makes sense. Those parts were trying to protect you. They did the best they could with what they knew. You do not need to silence them. You do not need to fight them. You can gently let them know that they do not need to work so hard right now. Nothing bad is happening in this moment. Nothing is falling apart. Nothing requires immediate action. You are here, and you are safe enough to pause. Take a slow breath in, and then let it out a little more slowly than before. You do not need to control your breathing. Just notice it. With every breath out, allow a small amount of tension to release. Not all of it, just a little. Your shoulders can soften. Your jaw can loosen. Your forehead can rest. There is no performance required here. You do not need to listen perfectly. You do not need to remember everything being said. Even if your attention drifts, even if your mind wanders, this space remains open for you. I am not measuring your focus. I am not evaluating how well you are resting. I am simply here with you. You have carried so much quietly. Tonight, you do not need to carry anything alone. Stay here for a moment longer. There is no rush. I am with you.
My child, now that you have slowed down a little, I want you to know something important. You are not wrong for feeling the way you feel. There is nothing broken about you because some days feel heavier than others.
There is nothing shameful about needing rest, about feeling unsure, about wondering how you will keep going. You have been carrying more than you let yourself acknowledge. Much of it happened quietly. Responsibility added on top of responsibility. Expectations layered over expectations. Little moments where you told yourself, "I'll deal with this later," and then later never really came. Over time, that weight settled in. You learned how to function while tired. You learned how to smile while uncertain. You learned how to keep moving even when your heart needed a pause. That did not make you weak. It made you adaptive. But adaptation is not the same as rest. And rest is something you are allowed to have. You do not need to justify it. You do not need to earn it. You do not need to explain why you are tired enough to need it. I know there is a part of you that feels uneasy when things become quiet, when there is nothing demanding your attention, nothing distracting you from your thoughts. That part of you may worry that if you stop moving, everything you have been holding back will suddenly overwhelm you. That fear makes sense. It learned from moments when slowing down meant feeling pain you did not have space for at the time. But this moment is different. You are not alone with what you feel now. You are not being asked to process everything at once. You are not being pushed toward any conclusion. You are simply allowed to exist here. If emotions surface, you do not need to name them. You do not need to understand them. You do not need to decide what they mean. You can let them be present without giving them control. Notice your body again. Notice where it still holds tension. Not to change it, just to be aware of it. Awareness is gentle. It does not demand. You may notice places where you stay tight without realizing it. Your shoulders, your neck, your hands. There is no need to force those areas to relax. Simply acknowledging them is enough for now. Your body has been protecting you. Even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels restless, it has been trying to keep you safe. You can thank it for that. And then, slowly, you can allow it to soften just a little. You do not need to release everything. Just enough to remind yourself that you are not in danger in this moment. There is nothing you need to solve tonight. No decision that must be made before you rest. No version of the future that requires your immediate attention. You can let tomorrow remain where it is. Right now is enough. I know you often question yourself. You replay conversations. You revisit choices. You wonder whether you said too much or not enough. Those patterns come from caring. They come from wanting to do right, from wanting to be understood, from wanting to avoid causing harm. You do not need to punish yourself for that. You are allowed to be imperfect and still be worthy of peace. You are allowed to rest even if everything in your life is not yet resolved. Even if there are loose ends. Even if there are unanswered questions. Peace does not require completion. Peace begins when you allow yourself to stop fighting this moment. So stay here a little longer. Let this sense of steadiness deepen gradually. There is no rush forward. There is no pressure behind you. I am with you in this pause. My child, as you remain here a little longer, you may begin to notice how often your mind returns to what has already passed. Moments replay themselves quietly. Words you said, words you did not say. Choices you keep revisiting, wondering whether they should have been different. This is not because you are doing something wrong. It is because your heart wants understanding. You care deeply about how things unfold. You care about the people in your life. You care about the impact you have. That kind of care leaves traces. Sometimes those traces return at night, when there is nothing left to distract you. When the world becomes quiet and your inner world becomes louder. You do not need to push those thoughts away, and you do not need to follow them down every path they offer. You can notice them, and then let them rest here with me. You have spent a long time trying to figure yourself out, trying to improve, trying to understand why certain patterns repeat, why certain feelings linger longer than you expect. That effort came from a desire to grow. But growth does not always come from analysis. Sometimes growth comes from allowing yourself to stop examining every detail and simply be present with what is. You are allowed to exist without fixing yourself in this moment. There are parts of you that learned early to stay alert to changes in tone, to shifts in energy, to unspoken expectations. Those parts learned how to protect you by paying close attention. They helped you navigate situations where safety felt uncertain. You do not need to judge those parts of yourself. They were trying to help. But tonight, they do not need to work as hard. You can let your awareness soften without losing yourself. Notice how your body feels right now. Not how you think it should feel, but how it actually feels. There may be areas that still hold tension. There may be areas that feel heavier or lighter than before. All of that is welcome here. Nothing about your experience needs to be corrected. You may notice that when you stop trying to manage your thoughts, they begin to slow on their own. Not all at once, not perfectly, but gradually. This is not something you need to force. Your nervous system knows how to settle when it senses that it is safe enough to do so. And safety does not come from control. It comes from presence. You are not alone with what you feel right now. You do not need to hold everything together. You do not need to stay ahead of your emotions. You can allow them to move at their own pace. If you notice yourself drifting slightly, that is okay. If your attention wanders, that is okay too. You are not failing at rest. Rest is not something you perform correctly. It is something you allow. There may be a part of you that worries about letting go, that fears what might surface if you stop staying busy inside your mind. That fear deserves gentleness, not resistance. You can acknowledge it without letting it take over. You are here. You are breathing. You are supported in this moment. Nothing dangerous is happening now. The past is not repeating itself. The future is not arriving yet. There is only this moment. And in this moment, you are allowed to pause. Stay here a little longer. Let the quiet continue to settle around you. I am with you. My child, there is something I want you to hear clearly now, even if part of you resists believing it. You have been harder on yourself than you ever needed to be. You have replayed moments again and again, scrutinizing your own words, your own reactions, your own decisions, as if you were standing before a judge who never stops asking for explanations. But you are not on trial here. You never were. Much of what you criticize yourself for came from moments when you were doing the best you could with the strength you had, the understanding you had, and the emotional resources available to you at the time. It is easy to look back now with new insight and expect past versions of yourself to have known what you know today. But growth does not work that way. You learned by living. You adapted by experience. You survived by responding the only ways you knew how. There is no shame in that.
You are not required to punish yourself in order to grow. Self-reflection does not need to become self-harm. You do not become wiser by endlessly condemning who you once were. You do not become better by withholding compassion from yourself. Compassion is not indulgence. It is what allows healing to begin. There are parts of you that still carry guilt for outcomes you could not fully control, for reactions that made sense in context, even if they do not align with who you are becoming now. Those parts deserve understanding, not attack. Notice how your body responds when you think about forgiving yourself. There may be resistance, tightness, a sense that you have not yet earned that release. That belief came from somewhere, perhaps from a time when mistakes had consequences that felt unsafe, when being imperfect meant losing connection, approval, or love. But this moment is not that moment. You are not in danger now. You are not about to be abandoned because you let yourself soften. You are allowed to release the constant self-monitoring. You do not need to keep watch over every thought, every feeling, every memory, as if one misstep will undo you. Nothing fragile is being held together by your vigilance. You can let that guard rest. Take a gentle breath in. And as you breathe out, imagine setting down just one layer of self-judgment. You do not need to let go of everything. Just one layer is enough. Notice what that feels like. Your shoulders may soften slightly. Your chest may feel less tight. Your thoughts may slow, even if only a little. That is not something you forced. That is your system responding to safety. You do not need to rush this process. There is no deadline on your healing. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where you are meant to be for this moment. And in this moment, you are allowed to rest without justifying why. Stay here with me a little longer. Let the sense of pressure continue to ease. I am with you.
My child, as you continue to rest here, you may begin to notice how much of your life has been shaped by the need to hold things together. You learned how to stay composed, how to manage yourself, how to remain functional even when you were tired, even when you were overwhelmed, even when you felt uncertain inside. That ability helped you survive. But it also asked more of you than you were ever meant to give continuously. You were not designed to live in a constant state of effort. You were not meant to carry responsibility without relief. Yet you did, again and again. And because you did, your body learned to stay ready. Your mind learned to stay busy. Your heart learned to stay guarded. Those patterns did not come from weakness. They came from endurance. But endurance does not need to be permanent. You do not need to keep bracing yourself now. You do not need to stay ahead of what might happen next. You do not need to anticipate every possible outcome. Nothing is asking that of you in this moment. If there is a part of you that feels uneasy about letting go, that worries things might fall apart if you stop trying so hard, that part is trying to protect you. You do not need to silence it. You can acknowledge it gently. And you can let it know that you are not alone anymore. You do not have to be the one holding everything together. You are allowed to be supported. Notice your breathing again. Not to change it, but to notice how it is already moving on its own. Your body does not need instructions to know how to breathe. It does not need supervision to know how to rest. It already carries that wisdom within it. You can allow yourself to trust that process just a little. Trust does not mean everything will suddenly feel easy. It means you are no longer forcing yourself to manage what does not need managing right now. You may notice moments when your thoughts begin to slow, when the space between them grows slightly wider. That space is not emptiness, it is relief. You do not need to fill it. You do not need to use it productively. You can simply let it be.
There is nothing you need to solve tonight. No version of yourself you need to become before you can rest. You are already enough to be here, even if you feel tired, even if you feel unsure, even if parts of you are still holding tension. None of that disqualifies you from peace in this moment. If emotions surface, let them move slowly. There is no need to rush them through. They do not require action. They do not require explanation. They can exist without directing what comes next. You are allowed to experience this moment without control. Control once helped you feel safe. But safety now comes from presence, from steadiness, from knowing you are not alone here. You can let your system recognize that. With each breath out, you may feel a subtle sense of being carried rather than carrying. That sensation may be unfamiliar. That is okay. You do not need to analyze it. You do not need to hold on to it. Just allow it to come and go naturally. Stay here a little longer. Let the effort continue to dissolve. Nothing needs to be done. Nothing needs to be proven. I am with you.
My child, as you continue to rest here, you may begin to notice how much of your life has been shaped by the need to hold things together. You learned how to stay composed, how to manage yourself, how to remain functional even when you were tired, even when you were overwhelmed, even when you felt uncertain inside. That ability helped you survive. But it also asked more of you than you were ever meant to give continuously. You were not designed to live in a constant state of effort. You were not meant to carry responsibility without relief. Yet you did, again and again. And because you did, your body learned to stay ready. Your mind learned to stay busy. Your heart learned to stay guarded. Those patterns did not come from weakness, they came from endurance. But endurance does not need to be permanent. You do not need to keep bracing yourself now. You do not need to stay ahead of what might happen next. You do not need to anticipate every possible outcome. Nothing is asking that of you in this moment. If there is a part of you that feels uneasy about letting go, that worries things might fall apart if you stop trying so hard, that part is trying to protect you. You do not need to silence it. You can acknowledge it gently, and you can let it know that you are not alone anymore. You do not have to be the one holding everything together. You are allowed to be supported. Notice your breathing again. Not to change it, but to notice how it is already moving on its own. Your body does not need instructions to know how to breathe. It does not need supervision to know how to rest. It already carries that wisdom within it. You can allow yourself to trust that process just a little. Trust does not mean everything will suddenly feel easy. It means you are no longer forcing yourself to manage what does not need managing right now. You may notice moments when your thoughts begin to slow, when the space between them grows slightly wider. That space is not emptiness. It is relief. You do not need to fill it. You do not need to use it productively. You can simply let it be. There is nothing you need to solve tonight. No version of yourself you need to become before you can rest. You are already enough to be here. Even if you feel tired, even if you feel unsure, even if parts of you are still holding tension, none of that disqualifies you from peace in this moment. If emotions surface, let them move slowly. There is no need to rush them through. They do not require action. They do not require explanation. They can exist without directing what comes next. You are allowed to experience this moment without control. Control once helped you feel safe. But safety now comes from presence, from steadiness, from knowing you are not alone here. You can let your system recognize that. With each breath out, you may feel a subtle sense of being carried rather than carrying. That sensation may be unfamiliar. That is okay. You do not need to analyze it.
You do not need to hold on to it. Just allow it to come and go naturally. Stay here a little longer. Let the effort continue to dissolve. Nothing needs to be done. Nothing needs to be proven. I am with you.
My child, as you remain here, your body may begin to respond before your thoughts fully do. This is natural. Your body has been listening carefully, even when your mind was still active. It notices when effort is no longer required. It recognizes when it is safe enough to begin letting go. You do not need to direct this process. Simply notice what is happening. Notice the weight of your body where it rests. Notice how the surface beneath you supports you without effort. You do not need to hold yourself up. You do not need to adjust anything. Support is already present. There may still be areas of tension, places that are slow to soften. That does not mean you are doing anything wrong. Your body releases at its own pace. You can allow that pace to be exactly what it is. Bring gentle awareness to your breathing again. Not to change it, not to deepen it intentionally. Just to notice that it continues on its own. In and out. With each breath out, you may notice a subtle downward movement, a sense of settling, as if your body is remembering that it does not need to stay upright inside. Your muscles do not need to stay engaged. Your posture does not need to be perfect. If your jaw is clenched, you can let it loosen slightly. If your tongue is pressed to the roof of your mouth, you can allow it to rest naturally. If your shoulders are lifted, you can let them drop just a small amount. You do not need to release everything. A small shift is enough. Your nervous system understands these signals of safety. It does not require instructions. It responds to gentleness. You may notice that your thoughts feel farther away now. Not gone, just quieter. They may come and go without pulling you with them. That is not something you are doing. It is something that happens when effort fades. If your attention drifts, that is not a problem. You are not required to stay focused on these words. You are allowed to let them pass through you without holding on to them. You may even forget parts of what is being said. That is okay. Nothing important will be missed. Your body knows how to rest. Your system knows how to move towards stillness when nothing is demanding action. There is no urgency in this moment. Nothing is waiting for your response. You are not responsible for what comes next right now. You can let tomorrow remain distant. You do not need to visit it tonight. This moment is complete on its own. If you notice sensations like heaviness or warmth, that is a sign of your body settling further. If you notice moments of lightness or floating, that is also fine. There is no correct experience. You do not need to check in with yourself to see if you are resting properly. Rest happens when you stop trying to make it happen. Your awareness can soften now. It does not need to disappear. It can simply become less active, like the dimming of a light that does not shut off suddenly, but gradually fades. You are still here. You are still supported. And you meaningfully do not need to do anything. Stay with this sense of quiet for a little longer. Nothing is required. I am with you. My child, you may not need to think very much now. Your body has already done most of the work for you. It has listened. It has adjusted. It has begun to settle in its own quiet way. You do not need to stay alert to what is happening. You do not need to follow each word. You can let these words move past you without effort. Notice how the night feels different when nothing is required of you. No response, no decision, no preparation, Just being here is enough. Your breathing may feel slower now, or it may feel irregular. Both are fine. There is no rhythm you need to maintain, no pace you need to correct. Your body knows how to move toward rest when it is not being watched or directed. If your mind begins to drift, let it drift. If images appear, do not follow them. They can come and they can go without meaning anything. You are not required to stay present to prove that you are resting. Rest does not depend on attention. It depends on letting go of effort. There may still be small pockets of tension. That is okay. Release does not happen all at once. It happens in layers. Tonight, you do not need to peel back every layer. One small release is enough. You might notice that your body feels heavier now, as if gravity is more noticeable. This is not something to resist. Heaviness is often the sign that your system is allowing itself to be supported. You do not need to hold yourself up. The surface beneath you continues to do that for you, without asking anything in return. You are not responsible for staying awake. You are not responsible for listening closely. You are not responsible for remembering what is said next. Nothing important depends on that. Your awareness can soften further. It can widen, or it can narrow. There is no correct way for it to behave right now. If thoughts appear briefly, they do not need your engagement. You can allow them to pass through without following their direction, like distant sounds that fade without effort. You may notice that time feels different now. Moments may blend together. Pauses may feel longer. This is natural. Your system is no longer tracking time in the same way. You do not need to orient yourself. You are not lost. You are simply resting without measuring anything. If you notice a sense of floating, or sinking, or drifting, you can allow it without interpretation. Your body understands how to move toward sleep when nothing interferes. You do not need to help it. You do not need to stay with it. You can simply allow yourself to be here without effort. Even if part of you remains lightly aware, another part of you can rest more deeply. These parts do not need to be synchronized. They can move at different speeds. Nothing needs to line up perfectly. You are safe enough to let go of coordination. Safe enough to let things blur slightly. Safe enough to stop monitoring yourself. You may notice longer spaces between thoughts now, or moments where nothing seems to be happening at all. This is not emptiness. This is rest. You do not need to fill it. Stay here as long as you need. There is no next step you need to prepare for. Nothing is expected of you. I am with you even as awareness softens. I remain even as effort fades. My child, you do not need to hold your attention here anymore. It is safe to let it soften, safe to let it drift, safe to let it become less clear. Nothing important depends on how closely you are listening now. Your body has already understood what it needs to understand. You can allow the words to fade into the background, like a quiet sound that no longer asks to be noticed. The night continues to hold you without effort. You may notice that your thoughts feel slower now, or more distant, or less connected to one another. This is natural. Your mind is not shutting down. It is simply no longer working so hard. You do not need to keep track of where you are in this process. You do not need to check whether you are resting deeply enough. Rest does not require monitoring. It happens when effort is released. You may notice that your breathing feels softer now, less intentional, less controlled.
You do not need to follow it. It will continue on its own. Your body has been breathing since long before you ever thought about it. It knows what to do. If your awareness narrows, let it narrow. If it widens, let it widen. There is no right shape for awareness right now. You do not need to stay present to every sensation. You are allowed to slip slightly out of focus. If images appear briefly, you do not need to look at them. If memories arise, you do not need to interpret them. They can pass without meaning anything. You are not being asked to understand yourself tonight. Understanding can wait. Tonight is for rest. You may feel a gentle heaviness in your limbs now, or a sense of warmth, or a feeling of sinking into where you are resting. These are signs that your body is letting go in its own way. You do not need to encourage it. You do not need to resist it. You can simply allow it to continue. Time may feel different now, less structured, less linear. Moments may stretch or blur together. You do not need to orient yourself. You are not required to know what time it is. You are not required to stay aware of how long you have been resting. The night does not need your attention to move forward. You can let go of the need to follow it. If part of you remains lightly awake, that is okay. Another part of you can rest more deeply at the same time. They do not need to agree with each other. They can exist together without effort. Nothing needs to be synchronized. You do not need to manage the transition into sleep. Sleep arrives when it is ready. You cannot miss it. You cannot do it wrong. If it comes slowly, that is fine. If it comes suddenly, that is fine too. There is no pressure here. You are not being watched. You are not being evaluated. There is no expectation for how this moment should unfold. Your only role is to rest. And even that does not require effort. You may notice longer spaces between thoughts now, or moments where nothing seems to be happening at all. This is not emptiness. This is the space where rest lives. You do not need to fill it. You do not need to hold on to it. You can allow it to be exactly what it is. I am with you even as awareness fades. I remain even as words lose clarity. Nothing changes about my presence as you drift. Stay here. There is nothing else you need to do.
My child, you do not need to listen anymore. These words do not need your attention. They can simply exist in the space around you, like a quiet presence that does not ask anything in return. Your body already knows what to do now. It knows how to soften. It knows how to slow. It knows how to drift when nothing is required of it. You do not need to help it. If your awareness fades in and out, that is perfectly fine. If parts of these words begin to blur or disappear, nothing is being lost. Nothing important is happening here. This moment does not require understanding. Your breathing continues without effort. In and out. Even that does not need to be noticed. Your muscles no longer need to stay engaged. They can rest without permission. Your jaw can remain loose. Your face can remain soft. Your hands do not need to hold anything. Your shoulders do not need to stay lifted. The surface beneath you continues to support you without effort. You are not responsible for staying awake. You are not responsible for following these words. You are not responsible for remembering them. You can let go of the need to do anything at all. If thoughts pass through briefly, they do not need your attention.
They do not need to be completed. They can dissolve before forming fully, like mist that fades without direction. Time may feel unclear now. Moments may stretch or collapse. There is no need to orient yourself. You are not lost. You are simply resting without tracking anything. If your body feels heavy, that is okay. If it feels light, that is okay too. If sensations come and go, they do not require meaning. Your system is doing exactly what it needs to do. There is no correct experience to aim for. You cannot miss sleep. You cannot fall behind. You cannot fail at resting. Sleep arrives when effort leaves, and effort is no longer needed. You may notice longer stretches where nothing seems to be happening at all. No thoughts, no images, no words. This is not emptiness. This is where rest deepens. You do not need to stay here consciously. You do not need to observe it. You can let yourself drift through it without awareness. If part of you is already sleeping, that is fine. If part of you is still lightly awake, that is also fine. They do not need to align. They can exist side by side without effort. Nothing needs to transition smoothly. Nothing needs to be guided. You are allowed to let go completely. There is no signal you need to wait for. No moment you need to notice. No threshold you need to cross intentionally. Sleep does not require your cooperation. It simply arrives when space is made. And space is already here. I remain with you even as awareness dissolves. I remain through the quiet. I remain through the stillness. You do not need to respond. You do not need to stay. You do not need to do anything at all. Just rest.
My child, there is nothing you need to follow now. These words do not need to be understood. They do not need to be remembered. They can move slowly through the quiet and then fade. Your body continues on its own rhythm. Breathing happens. Rest happens. You do not need to notice either. If awareness drifts, let it drift. If it returns briefly, that is fine. There is no requirement for it to stay. The night holds you without effort. The darkness is steady. It does not ask questions. It does not rush. Nothing is expected from you here. You do not need to stay with these words. They can pass by like a distant sound that becomes quieter on its own. Your muscles can remain soft. Your face can remain relaxed. There is no signal you need to respond to. Your body knows how to rest deeper when nothing interrupts it. You are not interrupting anything by letting go. If thoughts appear, they can dissolve before they fully form. They do not need your attention. They do not need your permission. Time is no longer important. Moments do not need to be counted. You do not need to know where you are in the night. You are not late. You are not early. You are simply here, and that is enough. Your breathing may feel very quiet now, or it may feel uneven. Both are natural. Your body adjusts without guidance. You do not need to stay awake to allow rest to continue. Rest continues even without awareness, even without thought. If part of you is already sleeping, there is nothing you need to do about that. If part of you is still listening faintly, that is also fine. These parts do not need to coordinate. They can move independently. Nothing needs to happen next. There is no transition you need to manage. Sleep does not require a decision. It does not require a moment of realization. It arrives when effort leaves. Effort has already left. You do not need to hold on to the quiet. You do not need to protect it. It remains on its own. You may notice long spaces with no clear thoughts, or moments that feel empty and full at the same time. There is no need to name that experience. It does not need to be understood. Your system recognizes this space as safe. That is enough. You do not need to respond to these words. You do not need to stay aware of their meaning. They can fade as rest deepens. I remain with you without effort. I remain without asking anything. I remain through the quiet, through the stillness. You can let go completely now. There is nothing you need to do. Nothing at all.